Today we're looking at the first part of the second lecture of the winter 1931 term of Jung's Vision seminars. The last lecture suggested that after a concrete confrontation with the dual aspect God image and its effect in the objectification of psychical reality, the next stage of psychological development is projected onto the contrasexual as the best available figure of otherness and therefore its comprehension. In the vision from last time, there are two such figures, the exuberant youth and the blind old man, representing the ecstatic and rational principles respectively, but here the rational principle is associated not with control and conquest, but introversion, where youth, Jung says, slurs over difficult facts, wisdom is contemplative. Around the feet of the old man who stops the youth in his tracks is a new growth of wild flowers, suggesting that the next means of psychological development will be a slow, impersonal, and natural growth. The wise man's blind eyes indicate the manner of attitude towards this growth. Don't look, don't watch, Jung says, since turning the eye inward, affixing intellectual vision, tends to prevent growth. Instead, what is called for is a gazing without seeing, an orientation towards the sun, like a flower. So let me quote Jung at some length in this connection. He says, quote, "In order to understand a thing, look away, look inside. When someone is telling you something you would like to understand, if at the same time you try to understand why you would like to understand it, if you look into yourself, you will get far more than in trying to understand just what the person is saying." This is the introverted means of psychological transformation, where one clings not to the outer world, but understands the world always with reference to some inner process of growth and development. Now, for those tracking the similarities between the process of growth and development outlined in the images of these lectures, and the so-called Ordo Salutis of Christian spiritual development, the visioner in the first image of the dual aspect God, and the second image of the objectivity of the psyche, experienced conversion, and here beginning the process of sanctification, the growth in spiritual maturity. Where the ecstatic principle was essential to conversion, standing apart from life to see its nature clearly, it now confronts wisdom, the proper means in which to live. But before this process of sanctification occurs, there is a new development in the vision. The vision continues and the boy drops into the lap of an ancient mother. As with baptism, this indicates the making living of the spiritual insights of the prior two visions. As with baptism, it represents an underground or underwater factor. It is a purified sacrifice of the individual life to the ambivalences of the material world, not to escape time or decay or immediacy, as is the trend in Western technological societies, but to embrace it. On this point, Jung then digresses into a commentary on Western society, and men in particular, who, he says, fail to take their lives seriously until their fathers have died, a result of always having a paternal moral background that ensures any damages from life will be paid for, leaving the individual to do what they please without consequence. We might notice the theological implications as it relates to a father God, and the religious development that saw the father's abandonment of his son in the story of Christ. If not even the father God can ensure against torments of life, then how much less society or the paternal father? So the descent of the boy in the vision to the ancient mother, the earthly principle, like submersive water baptism, is a descent into the unconscious and the embrace of the source of individual life. The vision continues. From the lap of the mother, the boy dives into a pond where he swims effortlessly, emerging at the far shore with golden hair. The effect of the preceding visions, the revelation of God, the objectification of the psyche, the journey of the young boy, indicate a process of psychological deification, Jung says, of the visioner into what he calls a spiritual satyr. A satyr is a mythological symbol often associated with physical sexuality, but here Jung suggests that within this process of psychological development, it's now related to the spiritualization of the sexual impulse, the confrontation with God, the concreteness of the psyche, and the sacrifice to the limits of the world produce a person with a differentiated Eros, an interest in the world that is not just sexual as it might be before such a process, but now that is something more. Psychologically important in this stage, however, is that the visioner still understands it only as a deification of the contrasexual, that is, of the other. It is not she herself who has obtained the spiritual Eros. We will pick this up next time.